Hi there, Frontline family. Today we are in 1 Peter 5, the last section of Peter's letter. And not surprisingly, as with many of the epistles, the letters, we get these instructions and guidance for leaders. But before you switch off and think, oh, well, I'm not a leader, it isn't for me today, this section, I want to remind you that if you are a disciple, you are a leader. Jesus didn't actually say be disciples in the Great Commission. He said make disciples. Part of what makes us a disciple is that we are investing in others, discipling others, serving others, developing others. And that seems to me to be a pretty good definition of leadership, investing in others, a disciple maker. So I want to frame all of the challenges in this section, challenges for leaders. I want to frame it in verse 12 because that's what I think Peter does. He frames it in grace. He roots his challenges in the fertile soil of grace. Stand firm in true grace. There are some who say that living in grace is a total absence of action on our part, some sort of like Buddhist Zen-like rest. That is not true grace. That is not that, Jesus has done it all for us. He has gifted us with salvation. We don't earn it, but now we get to live for him in it. Not to earn his favor, not to earn salvation, but rather the effort of grace is to surrender to him, to yield it to him, to walk in his gift of holiness, to live according to our true identity as saints and sons and daughters. That's standing firm in grace. Well, I don't know about you, but I need to be reminded of that. I need to be reminded to stand firm in grace, in that truth, especially when I read a whole bunch of challenges like in today's passage. And of course, Peter knew a thing or two about God's grace, didn't he? So much of Peter's story comes through in today's reading in between the lines, the context for what he's saying, how he denied Jesus 3 times. How Jesus restored him and appointed him to lead. That is grace at work in Peter's life. That's the foundation from which he's speaking. And Peter calls leaders to be shepherds, just as Jesus called Peter to be a shepherd. Jesus said to Peter, John 21, Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep. Be a shepherd. It's where we get the word pastor, pastoral from, isn't it? Not everyone is primarily gifted in that way. Some are so wired in that way that all of their leadership flows out of pastoral care. But we are all called to lead through love. So we are all called to shepherd. There's something in verse 2 that really got my attention today. Leading not out of compulsion, not out of greed, not out of gain, not out of power or control, but leading willingly out of love. And I think we can all feel from time to time perhaps trapped in our roles, trapped in our jobs. The truth is that we do have choices. We can make changes, although there may be a cost to that change. But I think that knowing that we have options, that can really help us to re-engage in our leadership, in our roles, and in our jobs. That actually, for me as a church leader, I don't have to do this. I could do something else. But I know that he's called me to do it, and that he has chosen me, and I'm choosing to be obedient and willing to that call. That's just my take on this little section here. So let me just finish picking up again on the idea of humility from verse 5. It's interesting that it seems to be a natural flow in Peter's inspired thinking to make a jump from young men to being humble. When I was a younger man, I'm not sure I got that. I tended to operate more in pride than in humility. Reading the story of Peter, he seems to be like that too as a young man. Humility, as C.S. Lewis says, it's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less. Humility is like a posture, a stance before God, under his mighty hand. It's the posture of looking heavenwards of recognizing that we need God, that we need his power, that we need his grace, that we need his wisdom. Our own wisdom won't cut it. It's about looking heavenward under his hand to his throne and casting our anxiety on him. What great advice for leaders. Recognizing that the government does not rest upon my shoulder, but upon his. So cast those weights and burdens upon him today and know that he will carry you through.